So again, continuing from along the lines of systems and of mastery as well. With any given subject, yeah, you've got two aspects to it, as I've sort of alluded to already. You've got the knowledge, you've got the scientifically measurable facts, you've got the physical techniques, okay? So that would be the scientific aspect of your system, okay? So if we talk about martial arts, it's the ability to throw a roundhouse kick or a jab or a cross or an elbow or a knee or whatever. It's the ability to, choke somebody out or throw up an armbar or whatever. It's the physical mechanics involved in that technique. So that, to an extent, can be pretty well documented and can, to a greater extent, certainly be put into a box. Everyone's going to have their own sort of slightly different variations on those themes according to body type and personality and all sorts of things. That really tips over into the other half, which is the individual expression, okay? Because like I say, there are as many different correct and valid interpretations of any given technique as there are people on the face of the planet. Everyone is going to have their own individual interpretation of a universal truth, should we say. So, whether we're talking about a right cross or, I don't know, a guitar chord, or it really doesn't matter. So, when you're training in the traditional martial arts, you get your belt system and things. So when you've got a black belt, really what that signifies is that you have reached a point where you have got sufficient mastery over the science, over the basic techniques of that system. You've learned to a point of unconscious competence. So if you don't know what I'm blaring on about there, anybody that tries to sort of learn anything, at first we're in a state of unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we're doing and we don't know how to improve upon that situation. Then you get to the point of conscious incompetence, meaning I still can't do what I'm trying to do, but I'm conscious that, I don't know anything and I have an idea as to where to look. Then you'd move into conscious competence, meaning you start to get things right, but your brain is very much involved in the process. You're still thinking through every single aspect of what you're doing. But eventually, you repeat this enough, the brain physically hardwires new neural connections, and you get to the point where you just can't do it wrong, There's a couple of little sayings here. The difference between an amateur and a professional in anything, the amateur practice is to get it right, and the professional practice is so that you can't get it wrong. And the other thing, this is more about giving people freedom and space and the chance to experiment and not feel bad about making a mistake or screwing up. Because basically, what I always say to my kids when they get frustrated, I don't care who you are, you can be a Zen master, frustration's going to creep in. If you can't grab a technique, whether that's a roundhouse kicking karate, whether it's a guitar chord, whether it's whatever it is, all right, that frustration is going to creep in eventually, and that negative internal talk will creep in, even if you're the most positive person in the world. And what you've got to remind yourself is the time hasn't elapsed yet, What is it that they reckon loosely, that you need 10,000 hours to master something? So this is how I sort of put it across to my students, my kids in particular, when I see them getting frustrated, especially if I see real negativity creeping in there, if I see them beating themselves up and all that, because that's a damaging internal trait, So I like to try and correct that as much as possible. And I tell them about me when I'm learning a new technique. Like my grappling is intermediate, my striking's advanced, my grappling, I've got a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, done some judo, done some catch wrestling. I'm competent, and the basics are certainly at a level of unconscious competence. But, the advanced game, no, I'm not there yet. I'm still very much learning, and I'm enjoying the process because I've got a completely different mindset, coming into that process as an adult than I did as a kid. Much more objective, much more positive. So what I say to my kids is when I'm learning a new technique, I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to screw it up. I'm going to screw it up like 10,000 times and then I'll get it right and it's mine. So that's like the process of learning. And unfortunately, we're not a massively patient society. And I can remember numerous experiences back in school where that was not the ethos that was put across to me, and it does leave you self-conscious. It does leave you feeling like a failure. It does leave you with low self-esteem if you encourage that, in people. Oh, you still can't get it. Why can't you get it? This is why I think people like myself that are maybe not the most gifted physical athletes actually can make the best instructors. And don't get me wrong, like these days I am a pretty gifted physical athlete, proof's in the pudding. But I wasn't a natural in any way, shape or form. But that's good from a teaching perspective because I understand the pitfalls and the difficulties that I had, I still can remember, and I think that often translates in being able to recognise that in other people. And because you've had to think, you've had to work so hard on yourself, you have a much better understanding at a conscious level as to what you do and why you do it, because you've already had to put the work in, as opposed to the guy that was like, the natural born talent, the next Mike Tyson or John Jones, the world champion at 21 years old. He just does it, yeah. Don't get me wrong, that's awesome. But I think from a teaching perspective, there is actually a lot to be gained from having to have gone through that process yourself and put that time in, especially when it comes to being able to convey what you're doing to somebody else, and B, in terms of patience and empathy as well. So, yeah, coming back to the aspects of any system and mastery. So you've got your technical stuff, then you've got the experiential stuff. So you don't have to be the greatest technician in the world in your discipline to have a massive, massive effect, to be hugely effective. Yeah, being knowledgeable and being technically competent, the great things, but they don't necessarily translate into success. That is really where the individual shines through. As I've always said, it's the man that makes the art, it's the man that makes the system, not the other way around. I know loads of fighters that are technically not particularly gifted, but what they do have, oh my God, they have it in spades. Maybe they've just got a right hand or a big right roundhouse kick or something, a specific technique, a basic technique, okay? Why are those techniques basic, by the way? Because they're high percentage and they've been recognised as such throughout the centuries over the development of all combat sports. So basics is maybe the wrong word, fundamental might be better, okay? So they've got the fundamentals, but they've got such heart and spirit, and the way that they throw that right cross is like an absolute bomb. And it doesn't matter that they don't have the technical abilities of, a Sugar Ray Leonard or a Muhammad Ali or whoever. They get the job done again and again and again. And I really enjoy, some of my favourite fighters are not particularly technically talented. I just enjoy watching them fight because you see them come through, the raw emotion shines through the technique and they overcome any sort of physical shortcomings just by pure heart and determination and everything. And in music, another analogy, I know many guitar players that are phenomenally, exceptionally talented. I could say to the average man on the street, have you heard of Yngwie Malmsteen? And they'll go, who? And I'm like, yeah, exactly, that's my point. And he's probably one of the best guitarists in the face of the planet. But I'm not a fan, personally. His music doesn't move me in any way, shape or form. I don't find him an interesting or a complete person in any way, shape or form. I find him pretty obnoxious from what I've seen, actually. And so after you've watched your 10 minutes of the tricks and you go, wow, yeah, then you're, whereas you take, Kurt Cobain or the guys from the Sex Pistols or the Clash or whoever, and they've got the whole 3 chords and a truth vibe going on, right? And what they were conveying was extremely real, extremely relevant, extremely powerful, yeah? And they did that sufficiently within an extremely simple musical construct, okay? Again, going back to Japan, the idea of the haiku, which is like a very short poem, a very symmetrical poem, and the idea is to say as much as humanly possible in a smaller, shorter, most simplified, space and language as possible. And again, when it comes back to your systems, simple, effective, accessible stuff, that's what's going to work for you under pressure. And that's when we really, really need them, Whether you're talking about performance art and the pressure of a performance, whether you're talking about martial art and the pressure of, potentially saving your own life, whether you're talking about life in general and you're talking about internal systems, and you need to be able to, recall stuff like a mantra, and you need to be able to cling on to that knowledge, in the midst of all the chaos, all the emotion, the adrenaline, the physiological, madness that's going on. You need something that's solid, that's going to get you through. So there is, we've had a look at pretty much the pitfalls of it, we've had a look at the positives of it, and we've had a look at the different aspects of it. And to me, once again, like a master is somebody that can really break down their chosen art, whatever it might be, and talk about the technical aspects in great detail and convey that to somebody else who has a really conscious knowledge of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and can explain how they're doing it to the next person, but also somebody that can do it in the moment, somebody that can apply it, not all theory, not all knowledge, somebody that can get into that ring, that cage, or, if it's a real situation, a live situation, and who can respond intelligently in the moment at hand and let themselves shine through. And that system is a very effective, very solid map, written very much by someone that's walked that terrain, but they've still always got that room for manoeuvre in there. Because a good teacher as well, you talk about systems, talk about masters, and the next natural progression is teaching. So a good teacher is nothing more than a catalyst. You can't actually sort of take what's in here and put it in there. Not yet, anyway. I mean, we're not quite in Matrix territory yet. That'd be cool, like, I know Kung Fu, click, great. But it's not the way it works. You can no more convey an experience to somebody than you can explain the colour yellow to someone that's been blind since birth. You know what I mean? Because there's no reference point, there's no, so a good teacher is a good mirror, manages to mirror back to the student effectively. As a catalyst, somebody that can inspire and sort of encourage people and keep them positive when they're struggling with the likes of, maybe they've hit a plateau. We all do, But eventually, you keep pushing through and you hit those plateaus. You keep pushing, you keep training, keep the faith, and you'll get through, and you'll be better than ever. So yeah, effectively, a good teacher doesn't do much for a living, really. They just kind of mirror it back at the individual and try and provide some reference points so that they can find their own interpretation. There you go.